Hello, Haiku back for my Wilds of Eldraine common rankings for constructed, historic, and explore pauper. I'm going to be ranking the Wilds of Eldraine cards on their impact and relevance. This is always really subjective because is a card that that sees play in a bunch of different decks more impactful as like a one of two of, more impactful than a card that sees as a four of and makes a deck all around it. Which one is the more impactful card? I try to kind of balance how many decks would play this card and how critical it would be to the decks that do play with the card in how my rankings are going. Before I go into Wilds of Eldraine, I kind of wanted to kind of review back, how my rankings were for LTR to kind of go back and kind of figure out, where was I on my card rankings for the cards and how they panned out, and then and kind of improve my card evaluation skills that way. So I think I did pretty well with the LTR cards rankings. The big miss was not kind of considering all the other land cyclers. I obviously put Lorien Revealed as my number one card, and then I didn't really consider the impact of the other land cyclers in how the flexibility of searching up a land versus having a big creature to end the game with at the end of the game. So there's been several decks that use the land cyclers to reduce their land counts and then have better consistency that way. And then also decks that are using, the land cyclers to fix their lands and then be a reanimator target. So I think that was a big miss. Is I was so focused on how much better Lorien Revealed was than the other ones, I didn't really consider the other ones in their own right. And so they should have been definitely on the top of the list or up there. I think the top three I think are pretty kind of set in stone there. Lorien Revealed, Club, and then Limbus. And then I think the land cyclers would just all go right there. Probably the black one is probably the best one, and then the green followed closely by the green one, although I could see arguments for the green one better than the black one. And then white and red are kind of sharing space with at the bottom of them, but they're all very strong. And then the rest of the cards were fine. I went a little bit deep with how many cards I evaluated, and I think toward the end I kind of got loose with what I considered constructed playable. So my rankings today are going to be my attempt to be a little bit more strict on what cards are actually playable in Historic Pauper or Explorer Pauper. But bear in mind, this is a very, very strong set. So I have a lot of cards to go through. I think that that are worthy of constructed play, and so it's going to be quite a deep list. All right, moving into my number one Wilds of Eldraine card, and I think the number 1, 2 in slot were very, very close. Is Hopeful Vigil. Now, Hopeful Vigil is enchantment that gives value when it comes into play, so you can bounce the enchantment and replay it. The other thing is it gives you a bonus when you sacrifice the enchantment. So with all the bargain cards, that's a way to sacrifice, but also we already have ways to sacrifice enchantments. I put the white one, and so spoilers, my next one is Hopeless Nightmare. So both of these, Hopeful Vigil and Hopeless Nightmare, obviously are a color pairing featuring the same soldier in the Nightmare, and she's out here without the Nightmare. But both of the cards play well in the same archetype. I put the white one above the black one because the white one is in the color of Core Skyfisher, and I think that really elevates it because that's going to be the big card that's going to be balancing these cards. Getting an extra permanent into play, so this triggers Celebration. It also, just beats down, and it's a vigilance creature, which also helps, kind of in race situations and stuff. So gets you on the board early, gets you value later on. Just overall, very, very solid card, and it lends itself into a lot of different synergies. The black one, Hopeless Nightmare, is another very strong card. Um, Being 1 mana cheaper is relevant, especially when you're going to be bouncing and replaying it. So that's a nice bonus that this has going for it. The other bonus that this has is this can slot into black-based burn decks. So if there's a red-black burn and there's a black burn deck, and so dealing 2 damage is no joke, and then it allows black to also have a permanent that they can sack as well. So far, black doesn't have other permanents other than things that can sack enchantments, other than what the bargain cards that it got in this set. But there were plenty of good ones. So moving on to the next card, we're going into colorless with Candy Trail. I think this is basically a 3 mana cantrip that you can pay in installments that scries 2, draws a card, and gains 3 life. And I think that all does enough for our format that it's worth it. And I think there's enough of a demand for life gain in the control decks that this will be pretty widely played in main decks and definitely in sideboards. But I think this is strong enough to see play in main decks, in control decks that really want a little bit of life while they cycle through their cards to find the relevant sideboard cards. So very strong card. It's also a bounce target. Obviously, the ETB is not as good as those other ones, being only Scry 2, but still pretty relevant. The only deck that this doesn't quite go into is things that are going to be sacrificing artifacts for value, or things that are bargaining away, because you only get to draw the card if you use this ability to sacrifice it. But that's the other kind of deck that also gets benefit from this, is decks that trigger on sacrifice. This also fits into those kind of decks. So very played. Really, it's going to be played much more in a control deck, but being colorless, it just fits into so much stuff. So this is more like not its impact on a certain deck, but it's just overall it's going to be seen play in a lot of different decks, and being a nice option in a lot of different decks. So that's why it earns a high spot on this thing. So not really on strength, but more how ubiquitous it will be in various decks. Again, more on the controlling side of the things to be able to play that. Next card is Candy Grapple. So definitely a very, very important addition to the Explorer Pauper meta, giving black another 2 mana instant kill spell. It was kind of ridiculous before we got the what is the infection one? I forgot the one with corrupted. We really didn't have many good removals in black. In black being a removal color, it was difficult in Explorer. But now this is a really solid option, and it's solid enough that it's probably going to see play in Historic as well. I kind of commented when I went over the black set review that you don't really have to bargain this to really get a fine card, and then the bargain bonus is just a nice thing late game to deal with an even bigger creature that this can't deal with. So very, very solid flexible removal spell. It's my number 4 for Wilds of Eldraine. Number 5 is Spell Stutter. This one's near and dear to my heart because I do really like to play the Ninjas deck, which again, I think we're going to change the name or the naming convention. More and more people are just going to be calling it fairies, because I really think it's going to lean into the fairy tribal mechanic. And this card is the headliner, right? Mana Leak is a very strong card to have access to. And so, well, that's my number 5. Number 6 is Torch the Tower. So, very strong bargain card. And again, with the other bargain card, it doesn't need to be bargained to be a reasonable removal spell. It's already better than the other removal spells. 1 mana, deal 2 damage in exile is fine. And then being able to upgrade it to Scry 1 and deal 3 in exile is great. So solid card, gets my number 6 spot. Number 7 is Return Triumphant. Again, initially I thought this card was going to be a recommission knockoff, but it has enough other stuff going for it. It triggers Celebration on its own because it brings 2 permanents into play. the creature itself and the young hero role. So that's a big plus there. The fact that after you get to above 3 toughness, then you can sack the young hero role to any bargain cards. You can reuse that permanent, but then the bonuses, the counters that it got, stay on the creature and stuff like that. So very strong card. A lot of different decks that it's going to slot into. So it's not just a recommission, where it's just going to go in Breathless Night decks. It can really fit in a lot of different decks. That utilize their graveyard and dumping creatures into the graveyard and then bring them back and growing them. I think we're on number 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, this is number 8. Number 8 is Toadstool Admirer, really for this ward. So a 1 mana ward 2 is a pretty big game. So it's going to be a real draw to play the green-white aura deck, but instead of on hexproof creatures, you're playing it on ward creatures and hoping to back up. So using the ward early game and then back up late game once they can pay for ward with Snakeskin Veil or Karamicha's Blessing. So very, very strong card. Next card. So now we are on card number 9. Stockpiling Celebrant. Just a very solid 3 mana 3/2 bounce a permanent, and you get to scry. So it works really well with the number 1 and 2 cards. But obviously there's already a deck based around bouncing enchantments where this is going to be able to slot into, depending on how far up the curve and how low on the curve you want to go. So that's the reason why this one's a little bit lower. It's not that it's not a strong card, it's that there are stronger cards or just as strong options, just at different mana values, that you may want to play over this one. So this one is not going to be as impactful because there's a lot of redundancy in this effect now. Although there hasn't been any at 3 mana before. All right, Besotted Knight, I think it gets the nod as a royal roll token attached to a creature, giving ward 1, and ward will stack. So it also fits into this deck with the Toadstool Admirer, where you're just going to be loading up enchantments on a creature, and so making it cost 3 to directly target the creature is a pretty big deal, giving you 1 extra turn of loading the enchantments on and not having to hold up mana for your Karamicha's Blessing. I gave this one the nod over the coming card, which also creates a royal roll token, because it's in white, and I think white has the actual possibility of just staying mono white and using mono white Ethereal Armor and this card to try to buff up creatures and attack in before the opponent can set up, and use Karamicha's Blessing to kind of finish off the opponent. So the next card is another royal roll card. And so this, instead of being able, the reason why this one is lower than the previous card is because this only goes in the green-white ward deck. And, it's a fine card. Its downsides being unable to put it on itself. It holds its back, as well as not being in white, means that it's tough. The other thing to note is you can't put multiple of the royal roll tokens on the same creature. So if you play all 8 of these, they do kind of conflict with each other, and they do start you start not being able to play them on each other, because you just gonna have to sacrifice it. So that is one downside to both of these, and so I think Besotted Knight is enough better that Redtooth might not see play, even though in the absence of Besotted Knight, Redtooth would be a 4 of in that deck. Next, another green card, Ferocious Werefox. So just a solid creature with a solid adventure, and the adventure is at instant speed. So it can save a creature, it can protect a creature, it can win combat, but then also the bonus it gives sticks around too. the bonus it gives also is another permanent to bargain with or to do other stuff with. So overall, very flexible, very strong 4-mana card. Very, very strong in Explorer Pauper, and a definite consideration in Historic Pauper. But in the Historic Pauper, there's a lot of other competition at this at 4 mana that it's tougher, but it's still in that conversation. It's such a strong card. Okay, next, a soft spot in my heart for Warehouse Tabby. I think there's going to be a very interesting card to build around. It's going to go into a pretty unique deck because the deck is going to be filled with Deadweights, Mogis Favor, and other enchantments that basically kill creatures. So this is a deck that would love Auramancer to bring back the enchantments and to cycle them again for removal. I think this is going to be a solid deck. As I talked about in my Black spoiler vid, all of the creatures being 1 toughness is tough against, especially in sideboarded games where you're going to be expecting mass removal for your 1/1s. But you can mitigate that by dipping into white and playing that enchantment. So that may be where you kind of see this kind of deck. But it's a strong card and it's a cheap mana cost. So overall, pretty interesting card. So I would say probably the cutoff was probably right here for after Besotted Knight. So let's see how many cards that was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So these cards, I think these top 10 were the premier cards. And then after getting into Redtooth Genealogist and Werefox, these are very, very strong cards. But I guess maybe we'll just call them honorable mentions. So 10 top 10, and then now these are all honorable mentions. I did order them in how honorable mentioning they get or how strong they are going to be, I think. But again, this is just my opinion. The next one up, Snaremaster Sprite. Again, this gets the biggest bonus from spell Stutter, which is our top 5 card right here. Jumping ahead, I shouldn't have done that. So it gets a big bonus piece of its fairy creature type, but it's a solid card. It does have some equivalents in already in the format that are seen play a little bit, and so this is not. This is slightly worse than one, slightly, it's just a more flexible card where it's half of one and half of the other one kind of melded together. But it being a fairy is pretty relevant. So I think it deserves a mention. There's definitely enough fairies, 1 mana, 1/1 flying fairies that this is not going to like make or break the deck, but I think it's a pretty good addition to fairies. Troublemaker Ouphe. Again, just this effect that 2 mana creature that can exile an artifact or enchantment is pretty strong. So I think Mass Vandal as it sees more and more play because it's an easier effect to activate rather than bargain. But in decks built around being able to bargain, Troublemaker Ouphe will be a very strong possible main deck. I'm a little bit doubtful that it can make the main deck, but definitely sideboard option is going to be really strong in addition to Mass Vandal. All right, next, Barrow Naughty. When I went over Black, I talked about some of the weaknesses of putting this in the fairy deck where the ninjas are going to be bouncing itself or other fairies where you're not going to get the bonus of the lifelink part. But just a very strong and efficient evasive threat. Grand Ball Guess. Again, an honorable mention because it will be able to go into Sly. So we really haven't got many of these 2 mana, a 3/3 attacker at 2 mana, and that doesn't have the 1 toughness issue on the opponent's turn. So just a kind of like a solid all-around creature beater that can slot into that kind of deck. Next up, another honorable mention to Rowan's Grim Search. Very strong card. It's just more held back because Deadly Dispute. Deadly Dispute really holds this, or it's just such a good card that it's hard to justify playing a card that costs even 1 more mana that does a very similar effect. Now this one fills your graveyard like crazy, and you also don't necessarily have to sacrifice. So there are some situations where this is better, and so that's why it deserves an honorable mention. But the places where it's better, you really have to kind of like, oh well, you're in this situation, and this card is going to be better than Deadly Dispute. But Deadly Dispute is just so consistently just on point that it's tough to justify that over this one. Cooped Up. I talked about the synergy of playing the cost, and then you can bargain this away. You can so you need instant speed. So you pay a cost, and then after paying the cost, you bargain this away before the exiled the enchanted creature gets exiled. So then Cooped Up never goes to it didn't go to the graveyard before you were able to bargain it away. And then you also can blink Cooped Up and do fun shenanigans. And it's a solid pacifism that you can eventually exile the creature with. So all around, pretty solid card. We just have a lot of pacifism and candle trap effects that this is not necessarily like, oh my god, be all end all, but it can do some interesting things that we haven't seen before that I think gives it honorable mention. Quick study. Again, I don't think the format is slow enough yet for a draw go deck where and they can just draw, have an instant speed draw too. But it's a solid card. And if like I said, the caveat was if we get a more well-rounded counter spell that can kind of answer multiple different things. I don't think a Drago blue deck is really that viable, but again, this is just a strong effect. Deserves an honorable mention. This one also deserves an honorable mention because it's the best card of its type, and so there is a deck, but it's not that good using these creatures and kind of abusing you already dead with them. So like, Explorer, Pauper, this could see play because Explorer is less mana efficient, less competitive than Historic, and so you can maybe get away with this kind of like off the wall strategy. But again, the strategy is inherently a little bit fragile, and so that's why this card is kind of relegated to the end of the honorable mentions. Ratcatcher Trainee, kind of same deal. It's kind of held back by some stuff of the card, but overall it's a strong card. But like creating stuff that can't block, even though it's at instant speed, which is good. But then even the main card has only 1 toughness, so all of the card can get addressed with 1 damage Wrath. So just a reasonable card, deserves an honorable mention. Another honorable mention I kind of talked about is Bespoke Battlegarb, which goes into the equipment deck. Just it can go into the equipment deck. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of payoffs for equipment that it's really justified. Like, oh, I want to go into equipment instead of just play Ethereal Armor and load up on enchantments. So that's why it's kind of relegated here. But it is a powerful effect to equip for free, and Celebration is a pretty easy a low bar to cross to get a free equip. And the last one, Mocking Sprite. The reason this is a strong effect, the reason why this one is so low is because it really can only go into one deck right now, and that's a combo deck in Explorer. And so there's better options in Historic than this. And in Explorer, the combo deck is not that good. It's very fragile. Obviously, this card itself is very fragile, being only 1 toughness. So that's why it's just relegated as an honorable mention. That yes, this is another effect that helps combo off, but overall, the plan to combo is just all the combos are based on creatures, and people are packing so much removal anyways that it's just a fragile strategy in general. So that's my overall thing, rankings for Wilds of Eldraine. Let me know if I missed any of your pet cards that you think are going to be really strong. I think that power level between the top 10 and down was actually a nice coincidence, going from Besotted Knight to all the rest of these. So I think I can basically guarantee that all of these cards, I'm just going through them all before I give my virtual guarantee. Yeah. So all of these cards will see play in Constructed Pauper, and then the rest of these are maybes. They're strong cards, but they're they have issues surrounding them. All right. I feel like this guy today, just very happy in celebration. It's hard to tell who's the guest. This guy looks like the blacksmith that they reference. But this guy, I guess this guy has like jewels on, so I guess he's more like the king. Anyway, comment down below with your own, rankings. Also, you can click the link to the Discord and join our discussions. I'm going to be starting a thread for everyone to kind of post what they think are the strongest cards of the set are. So overall, very, very strong set. A lot of good synergy cards got added to both of the formats. So that's always nice, is that all of these cards, their raw card power is not too strong. They're more they're more like integral additions to synergy based decks. So I think that's a really nice kind of outcome of any kind of standard set. Is we got a lot of interesting additions that are more synergy based. Because I think that's where Pauper really shines over other formats, is given that it's a lower power format, you get these kind of not game ending combos, infinite combos and stuff. We get more kind of just small synergies that can help a deck win games. And so that's where the format really shines, and I really like that Wilds of Eldraine kind of really kind of leaned into that synergy theme, I guess. I don't know. All right. See you guys in another video later on. Bye-bye.